it could become harder to get that Folgers in your cup. Loblaw says it's pulling Fuller's brand product from its shelves over a price dispute. Fuller's parent company raised prices twice last year. A spokesperson for Lola expects most stores to run out of stock of Fuller's products in the next week or two. Canada thought it could play tough by boycotting U.S. coffee. They're doing the same thing just like they did with Crown Royal. Why? It's going to backfire, just like banning alcohol from America backfired. Prices are soaring. Shoppers are angry, understandably so, and Carney's government is scrambling. This is what happens, guys, when liberal leaders push politics ahead of common sense. America built these markets, and under Trump, we never let our farmers or our coffee, very important, get bullied like this. Now, I'm going to break it down and more. Exactly how Canada shot itself in the foot again. Let's dive in.
Or is a cup of coffee going to cost?
Well, that's really hard to say. We probably are experiencing the highest coffee prices historically in the last 50 years. And that's because of a drought in Brazil and dry weather in Vietnam. So the impact of the tariffs will be just to drive that up more. We don't have tariffs in Canada on coffee coming from the U.S. Canada hasn't done it. What I think we're discovering in Canada about a lot of our industries, and that is that they're just so integrated with the U.S. So if you're a big coffee company, you have a completely integrated North American supply chain at this point.
So let's be clear here. You just heard it yourself. Coffee prices are already at the highest levels in 50 years because of drought in Brazil. And that's unfortunate. You know, dry weather in Vietnam also, that's the real driver. But then the so-called experts in Canada want to twist it into something bigger. Blaming tariffs and U.S. policy, folks, that's not true. Canada doesn't even tariff coffee. The issue is their dependency on the United States. That's the reality, just like everything else in Canada. Look at what was emitted in that clip. Canadian coffee companies are fully tied into American supply chains. They roast in the U.S. warehouses in the U.S. They ship through the U.S. and then act surprised when American tariffs on other nations push their costs higher. That's not America's fault. That's Canada's failure to build its own independent infrastructure. They want the benefits of our system, but then they cry foul when it works against them. And here's the kicker. Canadian politicians like Carney want to point the finger at America rather than admit that they let their industries become dependent on America. Yeah, Trump, this integration worked in America's favor because we had leadership that knew how to negotiate from strength. Trump made sure U.S. farmers and manufacturers came first, which is obvious. He's MAGA, America first. Make America great again. All that, and he's doing it. Canada didn't like it because for decades they coasted on American system without paying the price, and now coffee prices climb and Canadians are feeling it in their wallets. And instead of admitting they need America, they're talking about boycotting stuff again and be playing tough, and it's just, guys, that's political theater and noise. You can't boycott the very country that roasts warehouses and ships your coffee. It's madness. You see the economic suicide of it all. Canada is finding out the hard way. You're watching a liberal government just show how weak and severely dependent they really are.
If you're a coffee drinker, you've probably noticed the cost of your morning cup continuing to climb. Prices have increased steadily over the last 2 years, and U.S. tariffs have added even more uncertainty. Calgary roasters and importers say they are certainly feeling the grind. Jordan Canagan has more.
In November, we hit $3. Sneezes and the whole world gets a cold in coffee. And Brazil started feeling terrible.
The frost and the drought. We now have a scenario where the U.S. is tariffing both Vietnam, Brazil.
So here we go again. Another report out of Canada crying about coffee prices while completely missing the point. Coffee drinkers in Calgary are shelling out more, way more for every cup, and the media wants to pin it on U.S. tariffs. So I'm going to slow it down a little bit. The real issue is global. Brazil's drought, frost damage, and weaker harvests. That's what's squeezing supply. But what do Canadian commentators do? Oh, they look south and blame America. I mean, you just heard the bean brokers say it. When Brazil sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. That's not America's fault. That's nature, the weather. And yet, notice how quickly they slip in your turfs as if that's the main villain. Guys, let's be honest here. That's not true. Like, the United States is protecting its industries. leveraging tariffs to negotiate better deals and make sure foreign countries don't undercut Americans. That's exactly what a Trump-style policy and Trump administration is supposed to do. Put America first. Canada, on the other hand, has no plan. Their system is weak, dependent, and reactionary. They built their entire coffee supply chain on the assumption that the U.S. would keep markets wide open and costs low forever. Big Brother USA is always going to be nice forever. That's what they thought. And now with frost in Brazil and tariffs tightening, the global flow, it's all changing. Canadians are panicking. Prices for a 340g bag in Alberta jumped from $6.62 to $8.77 in just 1 year. That's a big increase. But instead of taking responsibility, Canadian leaders pass the blame to America. I mean, look at what consumers are saying. People in Calgary are switching from premium brands like Kicking Horse to bargain options at Walmart. That's not innovation. That's not resilience. That's settling for less because leadership failed again. And Canadians are paying for it at the checkout line, not because of America, but because Carney allowed Canada's economy to be so deeply tied to U.S. supply chains without building backup capacity. That's the reality. Here's the irony. We're constantly told that coffee consumption remains robust. 3/4 of adult Canadians still drink it every day. In other words, people are hooked on the product even as prices nearly double, and their government appears powerless to protect them. That's not really a story about tariffs. It's a tale of weak government and short-sightedness at the helm in what some refer to as Trump's America. That sort of exposure never would have been tolerated previously. Trump's strategy acknowledged that international shocks, either weather phenomena, conflicts, supply bottlenecks, or geopolitics, are unavoidable. His solution was always to lock down domestic capacity, negotiate from a position of strength, and make sure that when the world sneezes, America doesn't get a cold. Compare that to Mark Carney, the man that some liberals are already proclaiming as Canada's economic messiah. That notion is quite simply staggering. Carney represents the same self-anointed elite that relies on U.S. supply chains, while claiming Canada does things autonomously. His answer to every crisis has been more integration, more interdependence, more sermons about global markets. But when coffee prices skyrocket or inflation comes to the grocery shelf, those theories don't protect the typical Canadian. They merely demonstrate how Ottawa is hanging on America's coattails and praying Washington doesn't shrug them off. And honestly, the U.S. owes Canada no bargain coffee. American tariffs are meant to defend American farmers, American roasters, and American workers. If Canada complains, it should create its own system. I've said that many times. Unleash domestic resources, invest in infrastructure, set up supply chains, and Canada could enjoy stronger cash flow, better health care, and a more vibrant economy. But that requires vision, investment, and effective leadership. 3 things conspicuously absent in Carney's camp. Instead, Canadians pay more while their politicians blame America. It's a vicious cycle and a classic deflection strategy. Canadians aren't blind. They pay more for their morning coffee, and all this finger-pointing in Washington won't change it. This isn't a matter of tariffs. It's a matter of structural vulnerability. Trump's America reached the pinnacle of the food chain. Canada opted to relax, depend upon U.S. capacity, and now finds itself vulnerable. The more loudly they protest about coffee or booze or whatever, the more obvious that they're not equipped to fix their own issues. Now the Coffee Association of Canada gets on the air claiming consumption is steady as prices increase year on top of year, and pundits chuckle it up with lipstick effect analogies. People, this isn't funny. It's proof of an economy wearing down under liberal leadership. Folks aren't being stingy because coffee is a need, not a luxury. But Ottawa is treating this inflation as if it were a peculiarity of consumer tastes. Racks are being restacked. Brands such as Folgers are being withdrawn due to unjustified price hikes, and Canadians are settling for less expensive alternatives just to get their morning coffee fix. That's not resilience, that's survival. When citizens no longer qualify for premium goods and have to switch to bargain brands, that is not a charming lipstick effect. It is a sign of economic downturn. Rather than providing solutions, elites pat themselves on the back for coming up with great catchphrases to cover up the pain. This is the inevitable result of feeble globalist policies. They fail. Carney devoted years of promoting deeper integration, inflationary expenditures, and unlimited reliance on U.S. supply chains. And now Canadians are boxed in, financially unable to stand alone. They can't give up coffee, so they settle for less, and politicians assure them that's fine. Trump's concern was always to keep costs affordable for working families by standing up for America, getting energy, food, and even supply chains so regular folks wouldn't have to trade down just to make ends meet. What Canada is going through is not resilience. It's stagnation masquerading as stability. Excessive consumption does not indicate prosperity. It indicates that consumers are captive to paying higher prices for lower standards. And the longer Canada stays on Carney's record of failed globalist policies, the tighter Canadians hold on to little indulgences, because the big ones, owning a home, owning a car, taking a holiday, are further and further from their grasp. That ain't prosperity. That's decline. Canada can blame lipstick effects, frost, or tariffs all day long, but it doesn't matter. Nothing changes the fundamental reality. The economy is dependent. Leadership is weak. Citizens pay the price. In Trump's America, the United States stood up for its own and dictated the rules Canada played by. Now Canada is naked. This so-called coffee crisis isn't coincidental. It's the direct price of leadership failure. Thank you for listening to NextTruth Report. What are your thoughts on today's news? Let me know in the comments below. I read all of them. If you enjoyed this update, like the video and subscribe so you never miss our latest breaking news and analysis. Thanks for watching the Next Report.